The cold wind howled across the ice planet Viridia like a beast in pain. Dr. Minho Park pulled his thermal coat tighter as he walked toward the massive research facility. His breath formed white clouds in the frozen air. He had been on this planet for 3 months now, and the cold never got easier. Minho was a scientist who studied alien life forms. The Galactic Research Consortium had sent him to Viridia after their deep scanners found something incredible buried in the ice. Large creatures. Very large creatures. The initial reports said they looked like ancient Earth animals called mammoths, but much bigger. The research station was built right over the discovery site. Massive heating units kept the building warm, while powerful excavation machines slowly melted through layers of ice that had been frozen for thousands of years. Minho spent his days examining each new section they uncovered. Today felt different. As Minho entered the main lab, his assistant Yuna Kim looked up from her computer screen. Her face was excited but also worried. "Dr. Park, you need to see this," Yuna said. "The deep scanners picked up something strange in Section 7. Minho walked over to look at her screen. The scanners showed a massive shape buried deep in the ice. But unlike the other creatures they had found, this one was giving off energy readings. "That's impossible," Minho said. "These creatures have been frozen for over 10,000 years. Nothing could still be alive after all that time." Yuna pointed to the energy patterns on her screen. "The readings suggest this one is in some kind of suspended state. Not dead, but not fully alive either. Like it's sleeping." Minho felt his heart beat faster. If this creature was still alive, it would be the greatest discovery in galactic history. He grabbed his equipment and headed for the excavation site. Section 7 was the deepest part of their dig. The ice here was darker and older than anywhere else. As Minho descended in the lift, he could see the massive shape trapped in the frozen walls. It was huge, even bigger than the dead mammoths they had already found. Long, curved tusks stretched out from its head. Thick fur covered its body, preserved perfectly by the ice. But this one was different. As Minho got closer, he could see its chest moving very slowly, up and down, up and down. It was breathing. "Incredible," he whispered to himself. Minho set up his equipment and began taking readings. The creature's vital signs were extremely slow but steady. Its brain activity showed patterns that suggested it was aware but trapped in a deep sleep state. As he worked, Minho noticed something carved into the ice near the creature's head, strange symbols that looked like writing. He had seen similar markings at other dig sites across the galaxy. They belonged to an ancient alien race called the Vorthak. The Vorthak were known as conquerors who had ruled much of the galaxy thousands of years ago. They were cruel and used other species as slaves and weapons. Most people thought they were extinct now, but Minho was not so sure. He took pictures of the symbols and sent them to the translation computers. While he waited for results, he continued studying the sleeping mammoth. Its eyes were closed, but occasionally they would move beneath the lids like it was dreaming. The translation results came back faster than expected. Minho read them with growing horror. The symbols were a warning label. They identified this creature as a battle beast and listed instructions for its control and use in warfare. The Vorthak had turned these magnificent animals into living weapons. Minho felt sick. He looked at the sleeping mammoth with new understanding. This creature had been a prisoner, forced to fight in wars it never chose. The ice had not preserved it by accident. It had been deliberately frozen, stored like a weapon in an armory. As these thoughts filled his mind, something unexpected happened. The mammoth's eyes opened. Minho froze in terror. The creature's eyes were enormous and dark brown. They looked directly at him with an intelligence that was clearly not animal. There was pain in those eyes, and anger. But also something else. Hope. The mammoth tried to move, but the ice held it tight. Only its eyes could move, tracking Minho as he slowly backed away. But then something strange occurred. The creature stopped, struggling. It just watched him with those intelligent eyes. Minho realized the mammoth was trying to communicate with him. He moved closer again, fighting his fear. The mammoth's eyes followed his every movement. When Minho held up his hand, the creature blinked once. When he pointed to himself and said, "Minho," the mammoth blinked twice. It was definitely trying to talk to him. Over the next several hours, Minho developed a basic communication system with the frozen mammoth. 1 blink meant yes. 2 blinks meant no. 3 blinks meant the creature was in pain or distressed. Through this simple method, Minho learned incredible things. The mammoth was female. She had been conscious during her entire time in the ice, aware but unable to move for thousands of years. She remembered the Vorthak and the wars they had forced her to fight. Most importantly, she was not alone. There were others like her buried in the ice all around them. Minho gave the mammoth a name, Borum, which meant reward in his language. He felt she deserved something good after all her suffering. As night fell on Viridia, Minho sat beside Borum's ice prison and told her about the outside galaxy. He talked about planets with green trees and flowing water. He described the stars and the peaceful worlds where creatures lived free from war. Borum listened to every word, her eyes growing brighter with each story of freedom. But their time together was about to end. Deep space monitors around Viridia detected incoming ships, large ships, warships. The scanners identified them as Vorthak vessels, though everyone thought that race was extinct. The Vorthak had come to reclaim their weapons. Alarms began blaring throughout the research station. Minho looked at Borum with growing panic. The aliens who had imprisoned her were returning. Soon they would take her away again, and this time there might be no escape. In Borum's eyes, Minho saw the same fear, but he also saw determination. She had tasted hope for the first time in thousands of years. Neither of them was ready to give up now. As the Vorthak ships entered orbit around Viridia, Minho made a decision that would change everything. He was going to set Borum free. The red warning lights flashed across the research station as alarms screamed through every corridor. Minho ran toward the communications center where his colleague, Dr. Yuna Kim, was frantically working at multiple screens. "How long until they reach us?" Minho asked, trying to catch his breath. Yuna looked up with fear in her eyes. 6 hours, maybe less. The Vorthak ships are moving fast. Our distress signal reached the nearest fleet, but help won't arrive for 2 days. Minho felt his stomach drop. 2 days was too long. The Vorthak would be here in 6 hours. They would take Borum and the other frozen mammoths back to wherever they came from. All those creatures would return to slavery. "We need to evacuate now," Yuna said. "The transport ships can carry essential personnel and research data." "What about the mammoths?" Minho asked. Yuna stared at him like he was crazy. "Minho, they're frozen solid in tons of ice. We can't move them even if we wanted to. And why would we want to? They're dangerous creatures that were used as weapons." Minho thought about Borum's intelligent eyes and the pain he had seen there. "They're not weapons. They're prisoners. They've been trapped for thousands of years." "You've been down there too long," Yuna said. "You're getting attached to something that could kill you in seconds." Before Minho could answer, the station shook violently. Emergency lights flickered on and off. Captain Ji-Won Lee's voice came over the speakers. "All personnel to emergency stations. Vorthak advanced scouts have arrived. They're scanning our facility." Minho knew he had to make a choice. He could evacuate with the others and leave Borum trapped in the ice forever. Or he could try something that everyone would think was insane. He ran back to Section 7 where Borum waited. Her eyes tracked his movement as he approached. Even through the thick ice, he could see she knew something was wrong. "The Vorthak are here," he told her. "They've come to take you back." Borum's eyes flashed with anger and fear. She tried again to move in her ice prison, but could only manage small movements of her head. Minho had been working on something for the past few days, a neural communication device that could create a deeper connection than their simple blinking system. It was experimental and dangerous, but he was running out of time. He attached the neural interface to his head and activated the connection to Borum. Pain shot through his skull as their minds touched for the first time. Then suddenly, he was not just seeing through his own eyes anymore. Images flooded his mind, memories that belonged to Borum. He saw green fields under alien suns where massive herds of mammoths lived freely. He felt the joy of running with the herd, the love of family, the simple happiness of being alive and free. Then came the darker memories. Ships falling from the sky like metal rain, Vorthak soldiers with their cruel weapons and heartless eyes, the herds being captured one by one. The pain of separation as families were torn apart. Minho experienced Borum's first battle. The Vorthak had put control devices in her brain that forced her to charge into enemy lines. She had tried to resist, but the pain was too great. She had been made to kill creatures she had no reason to hate, battle after battle, war after war, always fighting for the Vorthak, never for herself. Until finally the wars ended, and she was no longer needed. Into the ice she went, conscious but frozen, waiting for the day she might be used again. The mental connection was overwhelming. Minho could feel Borum's thoughts mixing with his own. Her rage at the Vorthak became his rage. Her desire for freedom became his desire, but she could also feel his memories. His childhood on Earth, his love of science and discovery, his belief that all intelligent creatures deserve to be free. "I'm going to get you out of here," Minho said, both out loud and through their mental link. Through Borum's memories, he learned about mammoth biology and behavior. They were not just large animals, they were strategic thinkers who could plan complex battles. Their intelligence was different from humans, but equally advanced. Borum shared something else through their connection: knowledge of where the other mammoths were buried and how to wake them safely. She had been able to sense them during her long imprisonment. The station shook again, more violently this time. Captain Lee's voice returned to the speakers. "Vorthak, landing craft detected. All personnel to evacuation stations immediately." Minho knew this was his last chance. He activated the emergency heating systems for Section 7 and redirected power from other parts of the station. The massive heating units began melting the ice around Borum at dangerous speeds. Yuna's voice came through his communicator. "Minho, where are you? The last transport leaves in 10 minutes. "I'm not leaving," he replied. "Don't be stupid. You can't save those creatures." "Yes, I can." Steam filled Section 7 as the ice melted rapidly. Through their neural link, Minho could feel Borum's excitement as feeling returned to her body for the first time in thousands of years. The ice cracked and shattered. Borum's massive form broke free with a sound like thunder. She stood on shaking legs, water streaming from her thick fur. Even weakened from her long imprisonment, she was magnificent and terrifying. For a moment, Minho wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Borum was enormous, with tusks that could pierce metal and muscles that could crush him without effort. The other researchers had been right to fear her, but through their mental connection, he felt only gratitude and determination. Borum looked down at him with those intelligent eyes and made a sound deep in her throat that he somehow understood meant, "Thank you." The station shook again. This time it was not from Vorthak weapons but from something much closer. Heavy footsteps were approaching Section 7. Many heavy footsteps. Through their link, Minho realized what was happening. Other mammoths were waking up. The heating systems were melting ice throughout the facility. Borum was calling to her people and they were answering. The first Vorthak soldiers burst into Section 7, just as 3 more mammoths broke free from their ice prisons. The aliens carried energy weapons and wore armor that had terrified the galaxy for thousands of years, but they had never faced free mammoths before. Borum charged with a roar that shook the entire station. Minho found himself running alongside her, their minds still connected, sharing the wild joy of the attack. The Vorthak soldiers tried to use their control devices, but the neural interface Minho had created blocked their signals. For the first time in thousands of years, the mammoths were fighting for themselves. The battle for Section 7 lasted only minutes. When it was over, 6 Vorthak soldiers lay unconscious, and 4 mammoths stood victorious. Through his connection with Borum, Minho could feel more mammoths awakening throughout the facility. The real war was just beginning. The research station trembled as more mammoths broke free from their ice prisons. Minho could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the corridors above them. Through his neural link with Borum, he felt the awakening of dozens of her people throughout the facility. We need to reach the surface, Minho told Boram through their mental connection. The Vorthak will send more soldiers. Boram made a deep rumbling sound that Minho now understood was how mammoths communicated with each other. 3 other freed mammoths gathered around her. They were all females, and through the neural link Minho learned they had been part of Boram's original herd thousands of years ago. The elevator to the surface was too small for the mammoths, but that did not stop them. Boram charged at the elevator shaft and used her massive tusks to tear through the metal walls. The other mammoths followed, climbing up through the destroyed shaft with surprising grace for creatures so large. When they reached the main level, chaos surrounded them. Vorthak soldiers were everywhere, trying to set up control devices and recapture the awakening mammoths. But the aliens had never fought creatures that could think freely and work together. Through the neural link, Minho experienced battle from a mammoth's perspective. It was like being part of a perfectly coordinated team. Boram and her sisters moved as one unit, each knowing exactly where the others would be. They used the narrow corridors to their advantage, forcing the Vorthak soldiers into spaces where their weapons were less effective. Minho found himself running beside Boram, his human tactical knowledge mixing with her ancient battle instincts through their shared connection. When he thought about flanking maneuvers, she understood immediately. When she planned a charge, he could anticipate where they would strike. They fought their way to the main laboratory, where Dr. Yuna Kim was still trying to evacuate research data. She looked up in terror as 4 massive mammoths entered the room with Minho riding on Boram's back. "Minho, what have you done?" Yuna shouted over the sounds of battle. "I've given them their freedom," Minho replied, "and now they're going to help us escape. They're too dangerous, we can't control them." "We don't need to control them," Minho said, "we need to work with them." Through the neural link, Boram shared images of the Vorthak ships surrounding the planet. There were dozens of them, enough to capture every mammoth on Viridia and transport them to new battles across the galaxy. But she also showed Minho something the human scanners had missed. Weak points in the Vorthak formation where a fast, coordinated strike might break through. "The Vorthak have made a mistake," Minho told Yuna. "They're treating this like a simple recovery mission. They don't expect real resistance." Captain Jiwan Lee's voice crackled through the communication system. "All remaining personnel to Hangar Bay 2. We have 1 transport ship ready for launch, but Vorthak fighters are blocking our escape route." Minho looked at Boram and felt her determination through their link. "We can clear the way," he said to Captain Lee through his communicator. "But we need you to modify the transport ship to carry passengers that are much larger than humans." "What are you talking about?" Lee replied. "You'll see. Just trust me." The group fought their way to Hangar Bay 2 with the mammoths clearing a path through Vorthak soldiers. More freed mammoths joined them along the way. By the time they reached the hangar, 12 massive creatures followed Boram. Captain Lee stared in amazement as the group entered the hangar. The transport ship was large, but not nearly large enough for 12 mammoths. "This is impossible," Lee said. "We can barely fit the human personnel." Through the neural link, Boram shared a plan with Minho. It was dangerous and would require perfect timing, but it might work. "We don't all travel inside the ship," Minho explained. "The mammoths can survive in space for short periods if they have breathing equipment. They'll ride on the outside of the ship and attack the Vorthak fighters directly." Everyone stared at him like he had lost his mind. Space combat between living creatures and advanced starfighters seemed impossible. "The Vorthak won't expect it," Minho continued. "Their fighters are designed to battle other ships, not individual creatures moving through space." Yuna shook her head. "Even if the mammoths could survive in space, how would they move? How would they attack?" Boram approached the transport ship and examined it carefully. Through their link, she showed Minho her idea. The mammoths could use their tusks to grip the ship's hull. Their powerful legs could push off from the ship to launch themselves at enemy fighters. It would be like the hunting techniques they had used on their home planet, but in 3 dimensions. The station's emergency klaxons grew louder. More Vorthak. Ships were landing, bringing fresh troops to hunt down the escaped mammoths. "We have to try," Captain Lee decided. "Everyone aboard the transport. Emergency modifications for external passengers." The next hour was frantic preparation. The ship's engineers created breathing masks for the mammoths and reinforced the hull where they would grip. Minho worked with Borum to coordinate attack patterns through their neural link. As they prepared, Minho learned more about mammoth capabilities. They could hold their breath for much longer than humans. Their thick fur provided protection against temperature extremes. Most importantly, they had spatial awareness that humans lacked, able to judge distances and movements in 3 dimensions instinctively. Finally, the transport ship launched from Viridia's surface with its unusual cargo. Inside the ship, 23 humans sat strapped into emergency seats. Outside, 12 mammoths clung to the hull with specially designed grips, their breathing masks connected to the ship's air supply. The Vorthak fighters moved to intercept them immediately. 6 sleek attack craft approached in standard formation, energy weapons charging for the kill. Then Borum let go of the ship. She pushed off from the hull with her powerful legs, launching herself directly at the lead Vorthak fighter. The alien pilot had no idea how to react to a 12-ton mammoth flying through space toward his cockpit. Borum struck the fighter with her tusks, tearing through its armor like paper. The ship spun out of control as its systems failed. She pushed off from the damaged craft toward the next target. The other mammoths followed her lead. Soon, space around. The transport ship was filled with massive creatures moving like hunters in a 3-dimensional forest. The Vorthak fighters scattered, unable to cope with enemies that moved in ways their computers could not predict. In 15 minutes, all 6 fighter craft were destroyed or disabled. The transport ship flew free toward the edge of the Viridia system. As they escaped, Minho felt something new through his connection with Borum. It was not just her individual thoughts anymore. Through her, he could sense the other mammoths. And through them, he sensed something that made his blood run cold. There were thousands more mammoths frozen on other worlds throughout the galaxy. All of them prisoners. All of them waiting for someone to set them free. The escape from Viridia was just the beginning. Through the neural network, Borum showed him images of other ice worlds, other prison planets where the Vorthak kept their living weapons in storage. The mammoth liberation had revealed something the aliens had tried to keep secret for thousands of years. They had been preparing for a war much larger than anyone imagined. As their transport ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Viridia behind forever, Minho realized that he and Borum had started something that would shake the entire galaxy. They had not just escaped from one prison planet, they had begun a revolution. The transport ship arrived at Earth 3 days after escaping Viridia. As they approached the blue and green planet, Minho felt nervous through his neural link with Borum. She had never seen a world with so much life and color. Through her eyes, Earth looked like paradise compared to the frozen prison she had known for thousands of years. But their arrival was not welcomed with celebration. Military ships surrounded their transport as soon as they entered Earth's orbit. Captain Jiwan, Lee received orders to land at a secure military facility instead of the civilian spaceport. "They're treating us like criminals," Yuna said as she looked out the viewport at the escort ships. Minho understood why. 12 massive alien creatures that had been used as weapons were not the kind of guests Earth's government wanted to welcome openly. Through his link with Borum, he could feel her growing anxiety as more ships appeared around them. The landing was tense. Earth's military had prepared a containment facility that looked very much like a prison. High walls, energy barriers, and armed guards surrounded the area where the mammoths were taken after landing. Dr. Sujin Cho, a military strategist, met them at the landing site. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who seemed to evaluate everything around her as either a threat or an asset. "Dr. Park," she said to Minho, "you've created quite a situation. The Galactic Consortium is very concerned about these creatures." "They're not creatures," Minho replied. "They're intelligent beings who were enslaved by the Vorthak. They deserve freedom, not another prison." Dr. Cho watched as the mammoths were led into the containment facility. Borum looked back at Minho, with worry in her large eyes. Their neural connection let him feel her fear that she was being betrayed by the human she had learned to trust. "I'm sorry," Minho told her through their mental link. "This is temporary. I'll find a way to help you." Over the next week, Minho faced a tribunal of consortium officials who wanted to understand what had happened on Viridia. They asked him hundreds of questions about the Mammoths, the Vorthak, and his decision to free the imprisoned creatures. "You had no authority to release these weapons," said Counselor Hyun, the lead investigator. "Your actions put human lives at risk." "They're not weapons," Minho insisted. "They're people. Different from us, but still people with thoughts and feelings. People don't charge through starship hulls or destroy military fighters with their bare hands," Counselor Hyun replied coldly. Meanwhile, the Mammoths were kept in the containment facility under constant surveillance. Scientists studied them from a distance while soldiers watched for any signs of aggression. Borum and her people were fed and given shelter, but they were still prisoners. Every night, Minho used his neural link to talk with Borum secretly. Through their connection, he learned more about the Vorthak and their plans. What Borum told him was terrifying. The Vorthak Empire had not disappeared as everyone believed. They had been hiding in the outer regions of the galaxy, rebuilding their forces and preparing for something they called the Great Culling. It was a plan to eliminate all younger species, including humanity, and reclaim their dominance over the stars. The Mammoths had been just one part of their preparation. On dozens of ice worlds throughout the galaxy, thousands of different creatures waited in frozen storage, battle beasts from 100 different planets, all captured and enslaved to serve as weapons in the coming war. "We have to warn them," Minho told Borum during one of their mental conversations. "They will not believe you," Borum replied. "Humans think the Vorthak are gone. They do not understand the danger coming." Borum was right. When Minho tried to share this information with the tribunal, they dismissed his claims as fantasy. The Vorthak had been extinct for centuries, they said. His neural link with the Mammoth was making him imagine threats that did not exist. But Dr. Sujin Cho was different. She listened carefully to Minho's warnings and asked detailed questions about Vorthak capabilities and tactics. Unlike the other officials, she seemed to take the threat seriously. "Show me the evidence," she said to Minho after one of his tribunal sessions. That night, Minho brought Dr. Cho to the containment facility. Using his neural link, he connected not just with Borum but with all 12 Mammoths at once. The shared mental connection allowed Dr. Cho to experience their memories directly through a secondary interface Minho had developed. She saw the Vorthak Empire at its height. Massive fleets of warships conquering planet after planet. Billions of creatures enslaved and forced to fight in wars they had no part in choosing. The systematic destruction of entire civilizations that refused to submit. Most importantly, she saw recent memories from just before the Mammoths were frozen. Vorthak commanders discussing their long-term plans for galactic reconquest. The Great Culling was not a myth. It was a carefully planned campaign that had been in preparation for thousands of years. "My God," Dr. Cho whispered as the mental connection ended. "It's all true. Now, do you believe me?" Minho asked. "I believe you," she said. "But the Consortium Council won't. They're too comfortable thinking the galaxy is safe. We need proof they can't ignore." Over the following days, Dr. Cho worked with Minho to gather evidence. They used the Mammoth neural network to map the locations of other Vorthak storage worlds. The information was incredible. There were over 50 ice planets containing frozen armies scattered throughout the galaxy. But as they worked, disturbing news arrived from the Outer Rim territories. Deep space monitoring stations had detected massive ship movements in unexplored regions. Something big was moving toward inhabited space. Dr. Cho presented their findings to an emergency session of the Consortium Council. The evidence was overwhelming, but the political response was disappointing. Some counselors wanted to investigate further. Others insisted the Mammoth memories could not be trusted. Many simply refused to believe that such a large threat could exist without their knowledge. While the politicians argued, more reports arrived from the frontier. Trading posts had gone silent. Colony worlds were reporting strange signals in their outer systems. The signs all pointed to one conclusion. The Vorthak were coming. "We're out of time," Dr. Cho told Minho after the council session. "The consortium won't act decisively until it's too late. Earth's defenses aren't ready for what's coming." Minho felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. Through his link with Boram, he could sense her frustration at being trapped while her people across the galaxy remained in frozen slavery. Time was running out for everyone. That night, Minho made a decision that would change everything. He could not free all the imprisoned mammoths across the galaxy, but he could free these 12, and with their help, he might be able to strike at the heart of the Vorthak Empire before the Great Culling began. He activated the neural link and spoke to all the mammoths at once. "I'm going to get you out of here," he told them. "But if I do, we won't be coming back to Earth, we'll be going to war." Boram's response came immediately, filled with determination and hope. "We have been waiting for this war for thousands of years," she said. "Take us to fight for our people." The next morning, as dawn broke over the containment facility, Minho put his plan into action. It was dangerous and probably impossible, but it was the only chance they had to prevent galactic catastrophe. The liberation of Earth's mammoth prisoners was about to begin. The escape from Earth happened at dawn. Minho had spent weeks planning every detail with Dr. Sujin Cho, who secretly supported their mission despite orders from the Consortium Council. She provided them with a modified heavy transport ship and enough supplies for a long journey into unknown space. "The ship's weapons have been upgraded," Dr. Cho told Minho as they prepared for departure. "But where you're going, firepower won't be your greatest advantage. Your connection with the mammoths will be." 12 mammoths and 20 human volunteers boarded the transport ship in the early morning darkness. The humans were mostly scientists and engineers who believed in Minho's mission. They knew they might never return to Earth, but they also knew that Earth would not survive if the Vorthak succeeded with their great culling. As their ship left Earth's orbit, Minho felt mixed emotions through his neural link with Boram. She was excited to finally fight for freedom, but also sad to leave the beautiful blue planet behind. Through her memories, he saw images of her original homeworld, green and alive like Earth, before the Vorthak destroyed it. Their destination was Korthak Prime, the hidden capital world of the Vorthak Empire. Using information from the Mammoth neural network, they had located the planet deep in a region of space that most species considered empty and dangerous. The journey took 3 weeks. During that time, Minho worked to expand the neural network, connecting all the mammoths on the ship. What he discovered amazed him. The connection was not limited by distance. Through Boram and her companions, he could sense mammoths frozen on ice worlds throughout the galaxy. Thousands of them. All waiting. All dreaming of freedom. "They can feel us coming," Boram told him through their mental link. "Our people everywhere know that the liberation has begun." As they approached Korthak Prime, the true scale of the Vorthak Empire became clear. The planet was surrounded by massive orbital defense platforms and thousands of warships. It was the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. "How are we going to get through all of that?" asked Dr. Yuna Kim, who had volunteered to join the mission. Minho studied the defensive formations through the ship's scanners. The Vorthak had arranged their forces to stop traditional attacks by fleets of warships. But they had not prepared for what was coming. "We're not going to fight through them," Minho said. "We're going around them." Through the neural network, Boram shared a plan that was so audacious it might actually work. The mammoths would use their space combat abilities, learned during the escape from Viridia, to infiltrate the orbital defenses individually. Once inside the defensive perimeter, they would strike directly at the planet's surface. It would require perfect coordination and incredible courage. Every mammoth would have to survive alone in the vacuum of space while dodging thousands of enemy weapons. The chances of success were almost zero. "I will go first," Boram told Minho. "If the path is safe, the others will follow." "No," Minho replied. "We go together. All of us." That night, as their ship drifted at the edge of the Korthak system, Minho made his final preparations. He had modified his neural interface to connect with the entire Mammoth network simultaneously. It would allow him to coordinate their attack across multiple targets, but the mental strain could kill him. "You don't have to do this," Yuna told him. The mammoths can fight without you. Minho looked at Borum, who was preparing her breathing equipment for the space assault. Through their connection, he felt her determination and love for her people. She was willing to die for their freedom. How could he offer anything less? "Yes, I do," he said. "This is what we came here to do." The attack began at dawn, Korthak time. 13 figures launched from the transport ship toward the heavily defended planet. 12 massive mammoths and 1 human, all connected through a neural network that allowed them to move as a single unit. The Vorthak defenders detected them immediately, but they could not understand what they were seeing. Their sensors showed large objects moving through space without ships or engines. Their computer systems had no protocols for dealing with living creatures attacking orbital platforms. Borum led the charge, with Minho riding on her back in a specially designed space suit. Behind them, 11 other mammoths spread out in a formation that Minho coordinated through the neural link. They moved like a pack of hunters stalking prey among the stars. The first orbital platform they reached was massive, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But those weapons were designed to target ships, not individual creatures moving unpredictably through space. Borum struck the platform with her tusks, tearing through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. Through the neural network, Minho felt the other mammoths reaching their own targets. Each platform that fell created gaps in the defensive grid, allowing more mammoths to slip through toward the planet's surface. The Vorthak fleet tried to respond, but their ships were too slow and too large to target the mammoths effectively. It was like trying to swat insects with hammers. Every shot they missed gave the mammoths more opportunities to strike back. As they fought their way through the orbital defenses, something unexpected happened. The neural network began picking up new signals. On ice worlds throughout the galaxy, frozen mammoths were responding to the battle. The network was awakening them one by one. "They're waking up," Borum told Minho through their connection. "Our people everywhere are breaking free." Across the galaxy, mammoth liberation began. On 50 different worlds, thousands of creatures were emerging from their ice prisons. The Vorthak storage facilities, left largely unguarded because the IDU prisoners were supposed to be helpless, fell quickly to the newly awakened mammoths. But the real battle was still happening at Korthak Prime. Minho and the 12 mammoths had fought their way through the orbital defenses and were approaching the planet's surface. Below them lay the capital city of the Vorthak Empire, a massive complex of towers and fortresses built over thousands of years. In the center of the city stood the Great Command Spire, where the Vorthak High Council directed their empire. If they could destroy the command structure, the entire Vorthak war machine would collapse. "There," Minho said, pointing toward the spire through his mental connection with Borum. "That's where we end this." The final assault was the most dangerous part of their mission. The planet's surface defenses were designed specifically to stop ground attacks. Energy weapons and missile systems covered every approach to the command spire. But the mammoths had one advantage the Vorthak had never considered. They could work together as a perfect team through the neural network. As some charged directly at the defenses, others flanked from different directions. Every movement was coordinated, every attack timed perfectly. Minho felt his consciousness spreading across all 12 mammoths simultaneously. He was no longer just himself, but part of something larger and more powerful. Through Borum's eyes, he saw the command spire growing closer. Through other mammoths, he sensed enemy positions and planned counterstrike. The neural strain was enormous. Blood ran from his nose inside his helmet, and his vision blurred. But he held the connection together through sheer willpower and determination. They reached the base of the command spire as Vorthak ground forces surrounded them. For a moment, it seemed like their mission would end in failure. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, with nowhere to retreat. Then Borum made her choice. She charged alone into the heart of the command spire, carrying Minho with her. Her tusks shattered the armored entrance like glass. Her massive body bulldozed through defensive barriers that had stood for millennia. Behind them, the other 11 mammoths formed a defensive circle, holding off the Vorthak army while Borum and Minho struck at the Empire's heart. Inside the spire, they found the High Council chamber where the Vorthak leadership had gathered in emergency session. Ancient aliens with cruel eyes and hearts full of hatred stared in shock as a human and Mammoth burst into their most sacred space. "Your empire ends today," Minho told them, his voice carrying through translation devices. "The creatures you enslaved are free, and they will never serve you again." The High Counselor, an ancient Vorthak who had ruled for thousands of years, activated a weapon that should have killed them both instantly. But the neural network protected them, dispersing the energy across all the connected mammoths throughout the galaxy. Borum charged one final time. Her tusks struck the great control console that coordinated the Vorthak Empire. Systems that had operated for millennia shut down in cascading failures. Communication networks collapsed. Command structures crumbled. Across the galaxy, Vorthak forces found themselves cut off from their leadership and supply lines. Liberated creatures on dozens of worlds rose up against their former captors. The empire that had terrorized the stars for thousands of years began to fall apart. As the command spire collapsed around them, Minho felt peace through his connection with Borum. They had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. Not only had they prevented the Great Culling, they had sparked a revolution that would free countless enslaved creatures throughout the galaxy. "We did it," he told her through their mental link. "Yes," Borum replied, her thoughts filled with joy and satisfaction. "Our people are free." The rescue came 3 days later. Ships from Earth and a dozen other worlds arrive,